Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. On this episode, we have Cubs making huge moves, and the Bears just giving away the season. Happy holidays. But before we start, I would like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. Rockford Ice Hogs, the AHL minor league affiliate of the Blackhawks, only 90 minutes from the city limits and family-friendly fun for everybody. The next home game is December 18th against the Milwaukee Admirals. And also on Monday, December 21st, if you're off for the holidays, it's Teuvo Teravainen Bobblehead Night, sponsored by Dental Dimensions. So make sure you check that out. IceHogs.com. Tickets starting at just $7. Much more affordable than going to see the Blackhawks play. Get to see the Blackhawks players of tomorrow play today. So where to begin? I'm going to do a short show today. I've got a lot of things I have to get done tonight, so I'm going to make this one quick. Sorry for all of you that do enjoy listening to the show. But speaking of that, if you are new to listening to this show, we're by the fans for the fans show. If you have questions, hit us up. We will answer it. If you have a comment, we'll talk about it. You want to be on the show, come on. It's great. Check us out on our social media. Twitter at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, the website SwerskiSports.com. If you already are a listener, make sure you're hitting subscribe so you get the show every week. And that would be subscribe on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, however you listen. Make sure you're hitting subscribe. If you haven't done so, give it 5-star ratings and leave comments. Share it with your friends. We want to continue growing the audience because the more people listen, the more cool things we can do. Like, it's if we get more people listening, I can get more athletes on the show. Haven't had one in a while because they right now Bears are really difficult to get, and Blackhawks are difficult to get. Haven't had a lot of luck lately. But the more people listen to the show, the more access I can get. Like this year was the first year I was allowed to press access to the Bears training camp. That was a step in the right direction. Got access to a few players there. And we go from there. So make sure you guys are listening and sharing with your friends. So I guess I will start with the Chicago Cubs. Is going into the offseason, we kept hearing from Jed and Theo that they weren't going to open the pocketbooks like everyone thought they were. And everyone was saying that they were going to sign David Price and really have a third number one starter. And they didn't. They didn't go all in. And David Price got a ridiculous amount of money. And that's great for David Price. But it's not the money that the Chicago Cubs wanted to spend. So instead, I mean, figuring that they already have a number one starter in John Lester and a number two in Jake Arrieta, they wanted to just bolster a little bit because adding any sort of talent on the roster or on the rotation is going to make it better on the back end. So they were able to sign John Lackey, which makes Kyle Hendricks your number 4 and Jason Hamill your number 5. And that's not a bad rotation because a couple years ago, Jason Hamill was your number 2. So, I mean, now he's your number 5. And if he pitches like he did in the first half of the season, if he can do that all season long, that's a hell of a number 5 starter right there. And if Kyle Hendricks does what he did in the second half of the season, it's a hell of a number 4. And if John Lackey does what he did last year, then you've got a really, really good 1 through 5, and the Cubs are making noise. And then that's not the only move that you made. Is as the Cubs, you were able to dump Starlin Castro's contract, and it really was a salary dump. I mean, if you're looking at the Cubs, they owed a bunch of money still left on. They own $38 million left on Starlin Castro's contract, and they were able to dump him on the Yankees and bring back Adam Warren, who Adam Warren is. He could be a starter, he could be a long reliever, but either way, he's been a pretty decent pitcher. Last year, he posted a 3.29 ERA with 7.1 strikeouts per 9, 2.7 walks per 9, and a 45.2% ground ball rate. Those are more or less, pretty good numbers, especially considering, a long reliever. So somebody that could step up and be a starter if you need to, or, be able to eat a lot of innings for your middle relief. If you don't get good innings from your starters. So that's not really that bad of a trade. I mean, at first I thought it was a little worse than it was, but I started pulling numbers from Warren and seeing what they got, and not only did they dump Starlin Castro's salary, but they were able to parlay that into signing Ben Zobrist, and that was the guy that Joe Madden really wanted, that Jen Theo really wanted, and he's a little bit older, but he is like the ultimate utility guy. He can play the outfield, he can play the infield. He's a sabermetric, dream if you're into that stuff, and he's a guy that's a high on base percentage guy. He just gets on base, and that's going to only help these young Cubs. They didn't have a great batting average last year as a team. They generated their runs by high on base percentage, especially compared to their batting average, and home runs. And that's how the Cubs scored a lot of their runs. And if you have a guy that's an on base machine and gets on base more, you're going to be able to generate more runs and be able to generally produce better to back up your rotation. And that's a great move. So it's nice signing the Ben Zobrist, and I think he's going to get a lot of at-bats. They're going to, I think, play him at, in the infield and give, at second base, because now that you have Starlin Castro gone, is you're going to have an opening at second base. So Ben Zobrist will play there. Javi Baez will probably play some second base. Spell Addison Russell a little bit at shortstop, maybe play a little bit of third. Might play the outfield spots at some points. But you're starting to get a little bit of a crowded situation again. And then if you're the Cubs, then you go and sign Jason Hayward, which I thought was a great signing. I honestly would much rather have them bring in John Lackey and Jason Hayward than bring in David Price, because Jason Hayward, when you read internet comments about him, and you hear general manager anonymous comments about him, it seems like he is the ultimate divider of baseball. And I don't understand why people are so down on him, because when you watch him play, he just is a difference maker. I mean, he runs the bases well. He's an outstanding defensive outfielder. He's got some pop in his bat. He gets on base. It's just he's a sabermetric wet dream, and that is exactly the guy that Jed and Theo wanted. So I'm all happy for the move. I think it was great, and it was 8-year, $184 million, which is lower than some of the other contract offers he has. But I think the ultimate thing that got him is there's an opt-out clause after 3 years and after 4 years. So he's got 2 chances to opt out of the contract, which for him, he's 26 years old. He can opt out at 29 or 30 years old, which means he could be due for another big contract. And that's a lot better. That could be ultimately much more money for him than if he does the 8 years of the contract and at 34 years old is trying to get a new contract. I mean, there'll still be money to be had. Look at Ben Zobrist, got $50 million at even being older than that point. But Jason Hayward has the option. So if the Cubs are winning and everything's good, he's probably going to stay on. If not, he might opt out and try to sign a bigger deal. But ultimately, the Cubs will get their 3 years out of him. And at that point, it's, pardon my French, it's shit or get off the pot with Albert Almora. Is he ready to play yet or not? And the Cubs have that option then and there. So that begs the question. I mean, as of right now, you haven't gotten rid of Miguel Montero. So you've got Miguel Montero playing catcher, Anthony Rizzo at first, Ben Zobrist and Javi Baez playing second, Addison Russell playing short, and Chris Bryant at third. Now you have 3 corner outfielders and no center fielder. You've got Jorge Soler, you've got Jason Hayward, and you've got the big man playing in left field. So it's, what are you going to do if you're the Cubs? Do you take probably the best right fielder in the game, in Jason Hayward, and move him to center field? I mean, where it gets crowded, like I said, is Kyle Schwarber, you haven't left, Jorge Soler in right, and do you take the best right fielder in the game and move him to center field, which he's more than capable of playing center field, but he's a great right fielder. That in order to do that, you either got to trade Kyle Schwarber and move Jorge Soler to left, or you got to trade Jorge Soler and then get a center fielder. It's a tough one for me. Honestly, if I'm the Cubs organization, I'm going to put Jason Hayward in center field because I don't want to give up on Jorge Soler. Jorge Soler is just still so young. I mean, was he 22 years old? He's still so young, and he's only starting to get into his prime. You don't know how much you have in Kyle Schwarber. He's already done really well, shown you the power he has, but both of them are really limited in their defensive abilities. You saw that during the regular season. You didn't see it so much. It got masked a lot. But against the Mets, it really stood out how inadequate the two are to play the corner outfield spots and how you just can't plug somebody out there. Is they both made some big mistakes. And that's a problem. You still have guys that you can put out there that are much better fielding outfielders like Chris Coughlin. But it's it's a tough one to consider. I mean, do you want to pony up the money to maybe bring back Austin Jackson, who you brought over at the trade deadline last year, and he's basically a cheaper version of Dexter Fowler, similar style player. He's a center fielder. Do you bring him back and let him play center field, move Jorge Soler, try to bring in another arm for Jorge Soler? And I think that was kind of their move, is they were trying to dangle Jorge Soler and bring back Shelby Miller from the Braves, which if they were able to do that, that would have been a coup, because then you would have had Jorge Soler's money off the books. You could have gone and signed Austin Jackson, put him in center, and had Schwarber in left and Jason Hayward in right, and suddenly you're really minimizing your inadequacies in the outfield, and you strengthen your rotation with Shelby Miller. But it didn't work out. The Cubs were the runner-up in that trade. And now you have a situation where you either have to go out and spend more money on a center fielder, or trade somebody for a center fielder, or put the best right fielder in baseball, arguably, and put him in center field and hope it works out that way. It's going to be interesting because I don't think the Cubs are done making moves. They've still got so many pieces left that they can move around. They still want to add to their bullpen. I'm sure they would love to throw another arm into the rotation, so they don't have to be dependent on Jason Hamill or Kyle Hendricks. They can have pull two arms out of a pool of three. So let's go through it real quick and just kind of see who's on the roster and who's not from last year. John Lester, he signed through 2020, so with a mutual option for 2021. He's on the books. Trevor Cahill just re-signed. Miguel Montero signed through 2017. Dan Hare, who was your fifth starter for the end of the season, he announced his retirement, so he's gone. Dexter Fowler's the free agent. Jason Hamill's signed through next season with a club option for 2017. So you have him for one, potentially 2 more years. Austin Jackson's a free agent. Love to bring him back. Fernando Rodney's a free agent. Wouldn't mind bringing him back. Starlin Castro got shipped off to the Yankees. And Adam Warren, the guy that you got for him, he's got 3 more years of arbitration control left. So that's really good. The Cubs like that. Travis Wood, he's in his 3rd year of arbitration, so you still have him for next year. Rizzo signed through 2019 with a club options for 20 and 21. So you've got him. Tommy Hunter is a free agent. Jason Mott's a free agent. Jake Arrieta's in the 2nd year of arbitration, so you have him. Jorge Soler, you have him signed through 2020. Kristen Norfia is a free agent. Pedro Stropes in his 2nd year of arbitration. Chris Coughlin, the 3rd year of arbitration. David Ross, he signed through next year. So you got 1 more year on him. Jacob Turner's in for arbitration. Clayton Richard is a free agent. I heard rumors they might have signed him, or they're trying to sign him, but nothing concrete yet. Jonathan Herrera is a free agent. Hector Rondon's in arbitration, 1st year. Justin Grimm, 1st year. And then you still have these players under their, not even are eligible for arbitration yet. Listella, Alcantara, Kyle Hendricks, Matt Caesar, Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, CJ Edwards, Addison Russell, Kyle Schwarber, and Christian Villanueva. So you've really got a lot of puzzle pieces filled in. Right now, it's can you get another arm in the rotation? That way, whoever is left out, whether it be Kyle Hendricks or Jason Hamill, you can put them as middle relief, as a long reliever, and strengthen both your bullpen and your rotation. And what are you going to do about center field? And I think they'll try to trade Jorge Soler, but we'll see. I would love to have Jorge Soler here for a long time because I think he's just on the cusp of being an absolutely phenomenal hitter. He's got line drive power. He's just a great hitter, ready to burst onto the scene. So we'll see. And you still have a lot of free agency left. So there's a lot of moves to be made. There's still a lot of puzzle pieces left to be filled out. And anybody that doesn't get the player that they want is going to move on and try to make trades with the Cubs. So there's, everything we've talked about is still a work in progress. And, it's going to be another month or so before we figure out exactly who it is we're going to go to spring training with. So it's going to be an interesting time. And I'm excited because next year the Cubs go from being outsiders looking in to a Cinderella team to this year they're going to be one of the favorites to win the World Series. That's great to hear. And I'm not going to talk about the Bulls and the Blackhawks this week because, like I said, I want to keep this a little bit short. So I'm just going to talk about the Bears. And I didn't even want to talk about them because they make me sick right now. It's so infuriating as a fan. You're sitting there watching the game, and this is a team that they shouldn't be giving up the plays that they're giving up to them. Kirk Cousins shouldn't be throwing for 300 yards against your team. This defensive line shouldn't be dominating your offensive line like this. Their defensive end shouldn't be dominating Kyle Long like he did. This was just a poor showing by a team, and I want to, if the team had given up, and they played this bad, you sort of get that because they're not playing hard. But this team was playing hard. They were working, and they were trying, and they were putting the effort forward, and they just weren't playing well, and it's really frustrating to see. So I want to talk a little bit. I'll start with some of the things I noticed, and I want to get this out of the way is, again, this has been an ongoing theme, not just for this Bears game, but for the NFL in general, is officiating was terrible. I don't understand why it's been so bad this year. I really don't. A couple plays I want to point out in general, the ones that were just the most frustrating of all, was on the drive that I think it was the third touchdown that the Redskins scored. On that drive, it was the one where they had on the play where the tight end for the Redskins got that 42-yard pass completion. On that play, the right tackle was false started. It was a false start, clear as day. They didn't call it, and they end up with a 42-yard play. And then he had another false start, and they didn't call it, which is infuriating because they were both really blatant. But then late in the game, when the Bears had their backs against their own goal line, is Hronis Grasu. I mean, it was the most mild flinch ever. It looked like he just was farting, and they call a false start. Then even the announcers had to go back and rewatch it, and they were like, oh, yeah, I guess the referees really had an eagle eye on that one. It was just the stupidest thing. I mean, if he would have done that and it caused the other team to jump off sides, then you got to throw the flag and call it on the Bears. But if he twitches his butt the slightest amount and nobody else jumps, you don't call that. That's poor form. But especially when you're missing the right guard or the right tackle, jump up into a pass blocking stance before they even snap the ball. Go back and watch it. It's egregious how bad it was. And it didn't cost the Bears the game. And they should have overcome that. That's not the point. It's just that the officiating has been so bad. This is a league that makes so much money. It's by far and away the most popular sport in America. And they can't figure out the officiating. That's bad. I mean, it's not nearly as bad as basketball officiating, but it's already surpassed the baseball as being, the second worst officiating. Hockey's pretty good officiating, but it used to be NFL was right behind it, then baseball, then basketball way below. And the NFL is quickly catching up to the NBA as the worst officials in the league. It's so frustrating. But, it didn't cost the Bears the game. And what cost the Bears the game was being dominated at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. That defensive line of the Redskins just got after the Bears offensive line, and the Bears defensive line, they got some pressure in the first half, but they weren't able to get any consistent pressure on Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins was able to throw clean passes and move the ball and get first downs when they needed to. It was as simple as that. So if we want to talk positions by position, is Cornerbacks. The Bears cornerbacks were slipping and sliding a lot out there, much more so than the Redskins wide receivers, which is embarrassing because it shouldn't happen like that. You have home field advantage. You should know your field and know the conditions much better than the other team. So if you're slipping and falling more than they are, that's bad. Kyle Fuller didn't have a great game, even though he had the nice pick. He played well on that. He played off on the wide receivers so much in this game and gave them cushions, and you had Kirk Cousins was throwing a lot underneath. He's not throwing these huge bombs. He was throwing some underneath passes that were, intermediate and short passes. And when you're throwing that and you're Kyle Fuller, you can't leave your man with that much cushion because they're going to get that underneath stuff and keep the ball moving. They were a patient offense, and they moved the ball. They were consistent and steady and committed to the run, even when they weren't getting a lot of yards on the run in the first half. They were committed to it, and it kept them honest, the Bears honest, and throwing underneath, and they moved the ball and moved the chains, and that's how they scored touchdowns. Porter, again, he didn't have a great game either. There was the one play that was biggest in question was the 37-yard pass interference call on Porter, and it was a lot of physical play down there, but there was no way they were going to call anything if Porter turns his head around. Hell, if Porter turns his head around, he's probably going to get the interception right there, but he didn't. He got caught up with Deshaun Jackson's speed, and he doesn't turn his head, and you get the 37-yard pass interference play. And then again on the second touchdown of the Redskins, you had this one with Willie Young as well. Willie Young and Kyle Fuller, they don't hold contain, and Kirk Cousins just walks into the end zone. He looked around like, did anybody blow the whistle? Because there's no Bears around here. So the Bears cornerbacks didn't have the greatest game of the year at all. That was a little bad. And you had Jordan Reed, the tight end of the Redskins. Granted, he's pretty good, but they made him look like he was the most amazing player ever. He just absolutely beat the Bears. And at first, I wanted to throw Adrian Amos under the bus because he got beat bad by Reed. But then no matter who they put on him, he burned everybody. Linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, everybody got burned by him. And it was, Jordan Reed just absolutely was a bear killer today. He was probably one of the biggest reasons that the Bears weren't able to win today. What else? The defensive line. First half, they played all right. Got 3 sacks. Were able to contain the run, but ultimately, as they weren't able to get pressure on third downs and cause them to incomplete passes or interceptions, and in the second half, the offensive line of the Redskins really started showing their dominance and pushed forward, and they started being able to effectively run the ball. And the second half is, Kirk Cousins was pretty clean in the pocket. So they really, really missed having Pernell McPhee on the field, and they also really missed not having a second guy who can really get after the quarterback. They don't have somebody like that, and that's clearly become their point of weakness of this defense. Is you need another playmaker. You need somebody then when it's 3rd and 6 can get after the quarterback, close the pocket down, and force them to either throw it incomplete or get that sack to get them off the field. That's what they need, and that's got to be top priority for them in the draft or free agency, because they can't they can't continue like this with not being able to get consistent pressure. What else? offensive line. The offensive line had a really bad game. Matt Slauson had a really bad hold call, but other than that, he played pretty well. You had several holding calls on the Bears, and they're the most penalized offensive line in football. They have the most holds of any offensive line, and they're at 22 on the season already. And Horonis Grasu in the first half just got manhandled left and right by Terrence Knighton. And you don't want to see that. I mean, I know he's a hard load to handle, but if you're Horonis Grasu, you got to be able to fight him off a little bit. And in the second half, he did a little bit better, but first half, he just got manhandled. And Kyle Long was, other than that first game of the season against Julius Peppers, where he had like 2 days to learn this to play right tackle and up against Hall of Fame defensive end. Other than that game, nobody's really dominated Kyle Long. And Kyle Long did not play well today, and he got dominated. And it really hurt the Bears because there was so much pressure coming from that side. And I'm not going to be mad at Kyle Long because he really has been a team player in moving over to the right tackle position. But he got his butt whipped today. And it's going to happen. Everybody's got their day where they're not playing well. Today was the day for Kyle Long. What else? Tight ends. I'm going to say this with a straight face, and people might bitch and moan and argue with me, and that's fine. But Zach Miller is a way more dynamic pass catcher than Martellus Bennett. And if Zach Miller is healthy, he's not nearly the blocker that Martellus Bennett is, but I would much rather have Zach Miller on my team at this point than Martellus Bennett. Because one, Zach Miller is grateful to be on the team, and he's going to work hard, and he's a big mismatch when he goes out to receive. And Martellus Bennett is a me-first player who we haven't talked about this yet, is Martellus Bennett now on the injured reserve for a rib injury. And there's no way that I think the rib injury is that bad. I think they just don't want to deal with him. He doesn't want to play, and the Bears don't want to deal with him. So they said, you know what? You got an injury, a legitimate injury. We're going to put you on the injured reserve. Adios. And I don't think you ever see Martellus Bennett take another snap for the Bears ever again. I think on draft day, you're going to see a trade. Martellus Bennett's going to go, and you're going to get some sort of mid-round draft pick for him. And I'm not sad about that. Is all the egos on this team need to go. Everybody's got to be on the same page because this team, doesn't have the talent to win without being a full team integrated unit. And Martellus Bennett is another headache. And then quarterback, running back play. Running backs played, I think, really well. Matt Forte was, I think, the better runner today compared to Langford. But Forte has better hands than Langford, but Langford is going to get there. The thing is watching Jeremy Langford run routes, he is a hell of a pass route runner. I mean, several times he just blew by a cornerback. He was covered by a cornerback, not a linebacker, not a safety, an actual cornerback. And Jeremy Langford beat him bad, and it was Jay Cutler missed him on a pass. I mean, there was one, if Jeremy Langford's 2 inches taller, he makes that catch. But that's good to know and good to see, and that's going to be great for them next year as he continues to get better and you work with him a little more and he's got a whole year under his belt, is to really utilize that mismatch. Wide receivers, I thought they played okay. Most of your attack was Alshon Jeffrey, and you had Eddie Royal back, who played pretty well, and Zach Miller was out there catching passes. So the Bears didn't utilize a lot of wide receivers. Mariani got a few passes. They were just okay, nothing special. And quarterback play. is going down to the last drive. Had the Bears scored and won the game, I would have said that it was Jay Cutler who deserved the MVP for that game. Didn't throw any interceptions, had the one turnover, but that was, he got blindsided where he was not expecting that at all. Especially on Kyle Long's side, and just the way that the play developed is he got hit right there and didn't see it coming at all. And it wasn't that he had the ball low. He had the ball high, just, a big man stripped the ball. I can't be mad at that. But other than that, Jay Cutler made a lot of good decisions. He missed on a couple throws, but that happens. And he created a lot of time and made a lot of things happen with his feet because the Bears' offensive line got dominated and the pocket was collapsing a lot. And Jay Cutler had to step up in the pocket or roll outside and do a lot of things to buy himself some time. And that's where he showed his value. So I'm not mad at Jay Cutler at all. It was, like I said, this loss goes squarely on the shoulders of the defensive line and the offensive line. But last but not least, definitely not least, is what the hell is wrong with Robbie Gould? I said a minute ago that I would not be upset if Martellus Bennett never plays another snap with the Bears because he's an ego guy and a big talker. And I said, you got to get rid of those guys. And the Bears got rid of Brandon Marshall. They got rid of Lance Briggs. They're about to get rid of Martellus Bennett. The last one of those guys that they got to get rid of that have lovey ties and are vocally will throw their team under the bus is Robbie Gould. If you don't remember, the last couple seasons in the Trestman era, is he was so vocal going on the radio and talking about how much he didn't like it there and how bad it was and how he wasn't happy, and when it was contract time, his family needed to eat. And Robbie Gould, and you put up with that for Robbie Gould when he's the most accurate kicker in NFL history. But when he misses a 36-yard field goal to end the game that would give you a win when you're in the playoff hunt, and on a two missed field goals, and then you follow it up with a field goal that could tie the game at the end of the game, when you're still in the hunt, back-to-back weeks, it's time to go. And there's a lot of people that are like, we can't get rid of Robbie because he's the longest tenured Bear. Tough. I am loyal to winning. I don't care who my favorite player is. I don't care if I have a jersey of him that I just bought last week. If getting rid of that guy means that they're going to be a better team, that's what I want. I want wins. I'm loyal to the Chicago Bears getting W's. And I'm loyal to Super Bowl rings and Super Bowl trophies. That's what I'm loyal to. And if you're not giving that to me, then adios, goodbye. Robbie Gould, if the Bears don't have kickers on tryouts this week, if for nothing else is to send that message to Robbie Gould that we will replace you, then they need to pull their heads out of their butts, because you can't have your kicker just missing everything left and right, especially when he's trying to come back and prove himself. And if you missed that field goal last week and it cost you the game, you better go out there and hit this one. If not, you're done. This league is a win now league, and it's not a it's what have you done for me now, what you did for me in the past. I would get rid of Robbie Gould. That's just me. What else? The Bears found themselves in way too many third and really longs. They can't have that. Part of what's been keeping the Bears offense moving and productive and scoring points are when they're getting positive yards on first down, positive yards on second down, and either getting a first down on either first or second down, or giving yourself a third and short or third and manageable. You want to be in 3rd and 5 or less if you're the Bears, preferably 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. A situation where you could still keep the defense honest, you could run the ball and get a first down, or you could pass. When it's 3rd and 25 or whatever it is, they know you're either going to do a screen pass, a draw, and they're going to gear up for that. When it's 3rd and 10, they know you have to throw a pass, and they're geared up for that. If in this league there's too many good players, too many good systems, and there's too much parity for you to give the upper hand to the defense. If you're the Bears offense, you've got to get positive yards on 1st and 2nd down. And that all starts with opening up running lanes for the offensive line, with the offensive line for the running backs. Rashad Ross. He was the kick returner for the Redskins. And the announcers kept talking about how he was a former Bear. Former Bear Rashad Ross. Rashad Ross used to be with the Chicago Bears. I couldn't recall that name for the life of me. So I looked him up. He was on the Bears practice squad for 4 weeks in 2014. 4 weeks on the practice squad from September 1st to September 30th in 2014. Okay, I don't call that being a Chicago Bear. I call that having a cup of coffee with a team. So these announcers get a little crazy with talking about ex-players and things like that. What else do I want to talk about? Talked about the false starts that they missed and the bad officiating and Jordan Reed being a killer for the Bears. The line of scrimmage. I guess a couple notes is Jeremy Langford. I love Jeremy Langford, and I think he's going to be a great Chicago Bear for a long time. And I loved on that play where he got hit late, and the refs threw a 15-yard late hit penalty against the guy from the Redskins, and Jeremy Langford stood right up and fired back and double hand shoved him. I mean, granted, it's probably not the smartest move to make because they could have, called an offsetting penalty on him, but it was nice to see him just get fired up and not be pushed around. What else? The Bears checkdowns and their audibles to checkdowns. Teams have figured that out. Last week the 49ers figured it out and knew when they were calling an audible to a wide receiver screen, and ended up Jay Cutler threw a pick 6, cost them the game. This week they did it twice, and both times as soon as the Bears made that audible call the Redskins made a defensive audible and snuffed it out really quickly, and luckily didn't intercept it. So it's the Bears got to go back and work on their audibles and the play calling they have. And if they see teams know their calls, is use that to your advantage. Make a fake call for that. Make the fake call. Make them think that you're going to throw the hot route to that wide receiver there and try to do a wide receiver like a bubble screen almost. And they're going to run the defense there, and they're probably going to have 3 or 4 guys ready to tackle you. And you got Alshon Jeffrey on the other side, one-on-one. Go deep. You won't have safety help over the top, and let Alshon Jeffrey go. You burn them once doing that, and they're going to think twice about calling an audible and trying to jump that route. That's something that the Bears aren't doing. And there's a lot of, these last 2 weeks have shown a lot of chinks in the armor of the Bears team and the coaching staff and the play, the scheme that they've put in. We've talked a lot about Vic Fangio and given him a lot of props, and compared to the last 2 years, what you've had with the Bears and that defense that's been just so porous the last 2 years, you look at what they've done this year as a huge positive. But then again, you're giving up 300 yards to Kirk Cousins. And last week, it was Blaine Gabbert running for 44 yards for a touchdown to tie the game up and throwing for 71-yard touchdown to end the game in overtime. You're giving up way too many yards on the ground, and you're giving up way too many passing yards to, I'm not even going to call them mediocre quarterbacks, to bad quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins and Blaine Gabbert are bad quarterbacks, and you should be just absolutely hammering them. And the Bears aren't. So you start to second guess their schemes a little bit. And maybe it's just that they don't have the talent to be able to pull off what they're trying to do. But, that's life of the coach. And then you have the Bears. Fox is so conservative about things as he mismanages the games at the end of halves in several games this year. Mismanaging time, mismanaging, when he's going to go for it and when he's not. And Adam Gase he's trying so hard to establish a run sometimes that if it's not working, he's not willing to do the New England Patriot approach. And the New England Patriot approach is, we're going to use our short passes as our run game. If we can't get it going on the ground, Tom Brady's going to throw little swing passes and things like that to serve as the run, and then we're going to pass. And if we need to pass 50 times a game to win, that's what we're going to do. And you see at the ends of halves, and especially at the end of in the fourth quarter, is the Bears are able to move the ball on teams that they haven't been able to move on all game long and move downfield and score touchdowns. And I think at this point, if you're the Bears, what do you have to lose? Is be more aggressive. See what you have, what you can do. Is open up this offense a little bit. If you lose these next 3 games, oh darn, you're going to get a top 10 draft pick. If you win them and you show what this offense can do, that gives you some positive outlook for next year. Is what you can do, and you see, you're setting the stage for next year. Is who can play in this offense, who's performing well, and who's going to be here next year. That's what you're evaluating. I mean, you've got 3 games left. You've got, Lions, Buccaneers, and Vikings? It doesn't matter. You're already out of the playoffs. You're so far behind everybody else. It's not even. Let me look it up real quick. NFL playoff picture. Let's see the current standings. This is on CBS Sports, so I'm not going to look at the accuracy. The playoff picture. Right now, the 2 wild card seeds are the Vikings at 8-5 and the Seahawks at 8-5. And I really hate why is it always making sounds on websites? They always load video and make noise, and you don't want to hear it. You just want to see what you want to see. But anyways, if you want to look at after that, you've got the Seahawks and the Vikings are the 5 and 6 seeds. They'll play out the wild card teams, and then after they're 8-5 each. So if you're the Bears sitting at 5 and 8, they're 3 games ahead of you with 3 games left. The best you can do is tie them, and you lose the tiebreaker to Seattle. And I guess I don't know what the next tiebreaker is for the Vikings, but you would have the same record as the Vikings, assuming they don't win any of their next 3. You're already behind Buccaneers. You're behind Atlanta. You're behind Philadelphia. You're behind the Giants. And you've got the same record as St. Louis, New Orleans. And you're only a game ahead of Dallas, a Dallas team who hasn't had Tony Romo for most of the season. It's really bad. And if you're the Bears, I take that back. You're the Bears. You're the 15th pick right now. So you might as well lose these games. You know, you can't make the playoffs. You're not mathematically eliminated, but you're pretty much eliminated because there's nothing you can do to get ahead of Seattle. They beat you head to head, and the best you can do is if they lose all 3 of their next games and you win all 3 of their next games, you have the same record. The Vikings already beat you once. You're going to have to play them and beat them and hope that they lose their other 2 games and then beat them in a tiebreaker, which I don't think they even own. Well, they must own because they haven't been mathematically eliminated yet. But probably come this week, win or lose, I think the Bears will probably be mathematically eliminated. And at that point, all you're playing for is who's quitting on this team so you can get rid of those guys, who's still playing hard, who should be on this roster next year, and evaluating what positions that they need the most help in. And my analysis is you need a playmaking edge rusher. You need a middle linebacker who's fast and can step into the hole and stop the run. Shane McClellan has called the plays pretty well, but he's not. If you watch a Luke Kuechly, is when a play is developing, he hits that hole before the running back gets there. As soon as that hole opens up, Luke Kuechly's in there with his head and he's making the tackle. And the Bears middle linebackers, they're letting the play develop and come to them. You can't do that and on a good defense. And then you need another safety opposite Adrian Amos. Adrian Amos has played really well this year. He started every single game, I believe. And he's a building block for the future. But Chris Brzezinski is not. He's terrible. And Antrell Roll has been hurt a lot and hasn't played very well when he has been in. So, you cut Antrell Roll, you cut Brzezinski, you get another safety in here who can actually play, and that's going to bolster that defense. So if you throw those 3 positions, suddenly you're much better. And I'm going to tell you what is the Bears have a far less holes on this team than they did prior to the season starting. And we figured out, for the most part, the offensive line is these 5 starters are good enough. You've got 5 starting offensive linemen. You've got a running back. You've got a quarterback. Assuming you're going to bring back Alshon Jeffrey, either on a long-term deal or a franchise tag. You're going to have a healthy Eddie Royal, and you're going to have Kevin White. You probably need another tight end. I love Zach Miller. Hope they bring him back. But you need another tight end because I don't expect Martellus Bennett to be there next year. And so on offense, you need maybe some backups, and you need a tight end. So you need a tight end. On defense, you could upgrade a lot of positions, but realistically, the things you need are an edge rushing guy, a middle linebacker, and another safety. So with tons and tons of cap room and possibly a top 10 pick, that's not a bad place to be in, really. So all in all, this Bears loss was really frustrating as a fan because it's one that they could have and should have won. And, and I was talking with my friend Gary, and if you're a longtime listener, you know Gary because he used to come on the show before he had his second baby, and he still had some semblance of time in his life. But we were discussing, and he told me that the Bears have no business to make the playoffs anyway. And he's got a point. You are what your record says you are. And if your record's bad and you get in the playoffs, you're a bad team. The Bears can't win at home. They're losing to sub-mediocre teams at home, 49ers and the Redskins. Those are both bad teams, and you're losing at home to them. And if just because this league has a down year this year, if you were able to win these last 2 games and somehow sneak into the playoffs, you have no business being in there. And you're probably, going to play Green Bay the first round, and Green Bay is going to smoke you in the playoffs because they're starting to find their groove and figure out who they are. And when they find their rhythm and their groove, they're a much better team than you are. So what's the point? They might as well be who they are, lose these crappy games and get a better draft pick and go from there. Go into free agency with tons of money, having your number 7 overall pick last year come back healthy next year, and have another top 10 pick coming through. Trade Martellus Bennett, get a draft pick for him, and then get a compensatory pick if you don't sign Matt Forte. And there you go. You're suddenly in a much better position than you were going into this year. I don't know what else to say. I'm just disappointed in this team, and with how bad they played the last 2 years, I don't know why I was expecting so much more. But I think just having a legitimate coaching staff and a general manager who I like the approach he's taking, and I actually love what he's doing with this team. When you looked at the last 2 general managers, Jerry Angelo and what's his face, drawing a blank on Phil Emery. He's so forgettable. As when you had Jerry Angelo and Phil Emery, I never knew what they were doing when they made draft picks. Some of the guys were left field or didn't really fit, or it was guys that I couldn't see the benefit of adding them. Signing big contracts that didn't really make sense. I just never really understood what they were doing. There would be glaring holes, like Jerry Angelo with his just absolute inability to put an offensive line together. I just never knew what they were doing. And with the Bears' new general manager, is from the day one, I saw the plan that he had in his head, and it made sense. It jived with what I was thinking when he made his draft picks. Go back and listen to my Bears mock drafts from prior to the draft. I identified in every round like 2 or 3 guys in every round that I thought would be available for the Bears and that I really liked. And I mocked them out in those. And I mocked every single guy the Bears drafted except for Teo Fabaluje. He's the only one I didn't mock to the Bears. So that makes me feel good, because when the Bears' new general manager is out there drafting guys, they're guys that I can buy his plan, because they're guys that I'm identifying, saying, based on my experiences, I think that they're going to play well in the NFL, and they'll fit with what the Bears are doing. And he agrees, and they're turning out pretty well. Goldman's been pretty good. Adrian Amos has been pretty good. Jeremy Langford's been pretty good. Ronis Grasu has, for a rookie center, has not been bad. And he's going to be the long-term. So really, Kevin White got hurt, but from all reports, he looks great in practices, and I think he's going to be phenomenal. And really, that leaves Teo Fabaluje as your one guy that was throwaway, and he was a 6th round or 7th round pick, 6th or 7th, I can't remember. And they took a flyer on him just because he was big. At the end of the draft, is you're not drafting guys because they project well into the NFL. You're drafting on a trait you like, feature you like, hoping that they work out. And with Teo Fabaluje, he's just a big man that you hoped, if you keep the weight off and get him into your training program, and he learned that he could be a good backup offensive lineman. And we don't know yet. So we shall see. But even the free agency signings is he signed a lot of guys to prove it deals. And with a good coaching staff and guys that know that their next paycheck depends on them playing well, is they go out there and play well. Porter played well. Mitch Unrain played well. Jarvis Jenkins has played well. I mean, these guys are playing well because they're Zach Miller. They're on prove-it deals. They've got to play well to earn another contract. And you give big money to a guy who is not past his prime, like Pernell McPhee. You gave Pernell McPhee big money, and he's produced because he doesn't have a lot of miles on his body and he's young. So, I mean, I know we already talked about this Redskins game as we started off, but really at this point, individual games in this season don't really matter because if they win their next 3, they're 8-8. If they lose the next 3, they're 5-11. I think they'll probably I think they're going to win 2 of the next 3. I think they'll beat the Buccaneers, lose to the Vikings, and beat the Lions, and finish 7-9. And I think at that point, that's not a terrible record, and it still leaves you a pretty good draft pick with room to move. I want you guys to let me know what you think. And I know as the Bears' record has tanked, questions and comments have sort of really declined as well. Feel free to speak your mind. If you have something angry you want to let off your chest and hear other people hear it, hey, more power to you. This is what we're for. We're like sports therapy here. So hit us up on Twitter at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, or SwerskiSports.com, any of those ways, and hit us up with your question, comment, and we'll read it on the air, talk about it. If you want to be on the air and vent and say your piece, great. Feel free. I will turn the reins over to you. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, and I apologize for not covering the White Sox. I know they've added some players with Brett Lowry and such. We will talk about White Sox next week. We'll definitely talk about Bulls and Blackhawks. A lot of Blackhawk things I want to talk about, and the Bulls are a little bit depressing now. Next week we'll have more time. I promise. Thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears! Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna...